Okay, we are jumping right into this. We're not going to mess around with introductions and all of that stuff. I think we have sound now, and I'm pretty sure that you can all hear us, thankfully. So if you've just tuned in, we are here with school board candidate Jackie Wheeler. So we're going to turn it right over to her and let her tell us about her campaign, why she's running, who she is, and all of that great stuff. Welcome, Jackie, and thank you so much for your patience.
All right. Hello, I'm Jackie Wheeler, and you can hear me this time, and that's very exciting. I'm a mom community member. I've always sort of known the value of public school, but owning a home and moving into a community and having kids in the school, it really made me see how important that is and see the real connection that has. And I've been following kind of since the merger. But at that time, my kids were younger. They're in, first and second grade right now. So we were getting these ballots at home about the merger and over and over again. And since that point, I started to lean in. And so recently, probably a little over a year, I've been really focusing. I ran last year. And I want to be part of something as important to our community. I want to support our community, and I want to keep making this a great place. Yes, for my children to grow up, but really for all of us. I think there's a lot of good stuff here, and I think there's a lot of potential as well.
Wonderful. And when did you become I know you've lived here for a long while, but when did you become a member of the Barry community?
The Barry community. We bought our home in December of 2013.
So
it's
a
been
hot minute.
A decade.
That you've been able to pay attention to.
I'm still 29, so.
Right.
Yeah.
We all are. We all are, Jackie. So it's been a bit. So
yes.
And as you just said, you've been paying attention for quite some time. So you know a lot of what's been happening and a lot of the struggles that the school has had and some of the things that they have been facing.
Yes.
Both budgetary concerns, behavioral concerns, staffing concerns. So I guess we'll straight out of the gate lead with, the question of how do you see what your role might be in fostering some solutions and maybe some a better path than what we're on right now. How do you see where you can help with that?
So I agree. I want to acknowledge too that very recently, I think after we had 4 votes with that budget last year, there's been a real effort to get on the same page and to collaborate, and we are seeing that. So I want to acknowledge the Superintendent Canning and everyone else. There has been a good effort, and we're seeing some of that movement. We're seeing more collaboration. So I personally have been in outside sales and marketing like my whole adult life, and part of that is being able to bridge the gap and understand sort of the common goal and find solutions to get to that. So a lot of what I do just professionally and have done is just listening and finding that root cause and getting through, emotions and objections and kind of listening with a very, without getting your ego involved. And so I would bring a lot of that to the table. So yeah, I want to focus on collaboration. And you said another thing too with the divide. I have watched City and Town, and I think with the merger, there was a lot of don't tell me what to do. This isn't my choice. And I think really there's a huge opportunity. And again, we're doing it. We're starting to, but there's a huge opportunity to involve the community, to collaborate with the community and to hear from them. And so I want to be a part of facilitating that. I try to be as accessible as I can. So yeah, and that's something that I think we should keep working on. I like the postings for the budget. I like the mailings that have come home. And I mean, I like what you're doing here. This is amazing. But these sorts of things, I think these are the things that are going to drive that collaboration, and then we won't have as much infighting because we're going to understand each other because we're going to speak
Yes.
and listen.
And that's I guess the biggest part of being a school board member really is being able to speak, but as you said, collaborate and listen to the community and listen to each other and really try to find some common ground.
Yeah.
So speaking of budgets and all of those things, the Scott administration has recently proposed several changes. Really, there's not just one, there are several.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
I think so. Overall, I think whether or not it's perfect, I don't think it has to be perfect. I think it is a fantastic idea that he has brought it forward. I think we need really bold solutions. We need to challenge. And in order to maintain what makes us so awesome, what makes Vermont great, we are going to have to get creative. And so I think as a whole, I'm very glad that he came out with the plan. I'm very glad that it's causing some conversations. I know they haven't been super specific yet, so it's hard to say, well, this exact thing. I know they've floated getting rid of the school meals. I personally don't agree with that. I think feeding kids is an integral part. And I know there's a discussion about like, well, if they can afford it. And the thing is I want to know that something works, and I want to see the data. I want to see the stories. And with things like meals based on kids who need it, a lot of times the kids who need it don't get food unless it's for everybody, whether their parents can't or won't fill out the form, whether, if they don't know to fill out the form, and then these kids don't eat. And so the only real way that it works and that all these kids get food is with these meals. And so that's why I would support that. And similar to that, there's talk of a voucher program, but there's no specifics. So right now I know we have a program where if there's no school in your neighborhood, so if we didn't have Spalding, say we didn't have a high school, you can get a voucher to go to a nearby school, and that makes sense, and that works very well. And that's taking your tax dollars and following the student, and it makes sense because there's no option. So we have that right now, and that's good. Generally, voucher programs that are all in are not good. So it'll sound nice. It'll say school choice, which is a wonderful marketing term. But the reality is when you remove the income caps and the restrictions, it ends up just sort of funneling tax dollars under a private umbrella. So, but Governor Scott has also said it's not exactly that. So I would disagree if it was privatizing tax dollars, because I think the public should be aware of where their money is going. That's one of the reasons I want to run. I want that transparency. But it may not be the case. So the other key part of his plan is the merging of the districts. Five's a really small number. I would ask to see the numbers. I like the idea of consolidating. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the benefits of population density that some other school districts will have nationwide without having the population. There's not a lot of us here. So I like that. I think that's a good idea. I don't know that it will turn out to be implemented exactly as 5 districts, but I think it's a good start, and I think it's a good conversation. So, I mean, overall, I think it's a great plan. I think there are a lot of good directions that we could go in, and it depends on the details, which is, what they're working on now. So I look forward to hearing more. It's kind of exciting.
Well, and like you said, it's conversations. So
Yes.
you're opening up a line of communication, and you're willing to sit and listen and determine from there, and maybe meet in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, Governor Scott's an elected official. Like we are supposed to speak to him. We're supposed to give our feedback respectfully and constructively, of course, but like that's how you get to the best solution. And I think that's true on our board. I want to sit next to people with the same common goal of doing what's best for our students, doing what's best for our community, but I want them to think a little differently than me, because we're not going to get to the best solutions. We're not going to get to the best schools if we all
Think the
just
same.
think the same.
So we have our first question. It says, you have mentioned fully funded budgets. What are or what have BUUSD students missed out on by having a 5.4%, 7.44%, and now possibly a 4.95% budget increase for the last 3 years?
So I know specifically with last year, I'm looking at the screen to jog my memory. So last year, I know Berry Town was slated to get the CARES program, Berry Town Elementary. So Berry City has it, and it's a more intensive behavioral support program. And it's been successful so far. So we were slated to get that in Berry Town, and that was taken off the plate. So we still do not have that. So that's one thing that we couldn't have with the budget. This year, I know there are positions that are being eliminated. I had meant to get more information. I do know one specifically, I think she spoke at a board meeting, and I also know they try to eliminate positions where someone's retiring or they're vacant, but I think the number is 11 positions are being eliminated. So that's, I mean, I can look into that more and put it on my Facebook. So, I mean, they do miss out on some things, but we are Vermonters, we're Berry-ins, and we're resilient. So when we get together and we say, okay, this is what we can afford, we make it work if we have to. But yes, I mean, the students, if we can't buy things, the students don't get things. And that's not really a good or bad statement, it just kind of is. So those are just some examples, and I mean, I can look into more, but that's on the face of it.
And I mean, that's kind of a common sense approach across the board, no matter where you work. When there's cuts, there's things that get cut out, and city budgets, work just an office practice of any kind. So that seems like a kind of a common sense thing where you would know that, of course, somebody's going to miss out on something.
I mean, yeah, I'd
somewhere.
love to just pull money off trees and have like fully funded everything, you know, like beautiful buildings, brand new, like that'd be wonderful, but we have to work with what we can do.
The next question is, can you explain how this proposed budget impacts the taxes in the city and town?
So yeah, they're going down, and people are very confused. So the one thing that we tend to do a lot of times, so the percentages drive kind of the budget process, but at the end of the day, affordability is dollars, right? Like, it's how much money do I have to pay my taxes or to buy whatever. So they did something, and I don't know specifically, but they did correct some of the yield. They did correct a lot of the CLA. And what happened is, even with a percentage increase, we have, in city it's more flat, but Berry Town's going to see, technically they're both going to reduce. So it's like a 1 cent reduction in our tax rate, I think, in city, and then I think 2 to 3 cents in town.
So we'll do one more question from Facebook from the comments section, and then we'll move on to my next question. So going on about vouchers, the idea of vouchers has been floated by Governor Scott, but is a non-issue at this point. What are you trying to achieve by downplaying vouchers? Are you denying educational results are not better at private and religious schools and cost less?
Well, so the truth is, so the data on large scale, so nationwide, if you do public school versus private for the same socioeconomic class, public tends to outperform. So it is still very good schooling in general. Now, does that mean every single public school is better than every single private? Of course not. These are national, it's just a general average. And we do have a voucher program now, so we have one that is working. So it depends on what type of program. The issue I would have with some of the programs, and I put it on my Facebook, in like, I think in Louisiana, I think Kentucky, there's some in Florida, is that it sounds nice. It does. I totally agree. However, the results are every single time the money gets funneled where it's not accountable. So you can have an amazing private school and they do everything right, or you can have a private school that has people who have no degrees and have no idea what they're doing. And again, I'm not saying that's happening here, it's just there are no guardrails on it. So, excuse me, so it can be one-off. So I'm not against vouchers as a concept, I'm against the vouchers that have proven to not work elsewhere. And yes, typically public school education is very, very good. But of course you have to, when you look at individual schools, you're going to see a whole range, public or private or charter or anything like that. So general terms, I speak in general terms, and specifically you kind of have to look at what's in front of you.
Yeah. You mentioned Facebook, and so obviously you pay attention there. A lot lately, we've been seeing a lot more again about bullying and behavioral issues and problems. And as a board member, do you see yourself maybe trying to have those discussions about policy and changes that might need to be made, or policies that already exist that may be encouraged to follow along with those? What are your thoughts about all of that right now?
So yeah, the behavior in the schools, it's tough. I think first and foremost, a lot of, yes, in Barrie, also in Greater Vermont, we have a lot of parents facing challenges. I know in Barrie there's a lot of addiction, there's a lot of poverty, and that creates this hardship for the kids coming into our schools. So that's going to make it much harder for them to behave. So that's just right out the gate, and we have a lot of that here and nationwide. But also I've noticed, to your point, there's kind of an inconsistency with behavior. I know they have policies. I do talk to some BIs that work in the building and some paras, and they are struggling. I mean, it is a lot, and it's the real opportunity is if they feel supported, we can support the kids. And it's such a challenge because it's, we need funding to hire them, we need funding to pay them, but we can only afford what we afford. So I would have a lot of questions because, on Facebook, you hear reports of they don't tell the parents, or maybe they do and the parents don't care. And I would be interested in hearing at a board meeting, what is the policy and what happens, for example, when an employee is assaulted by a child. That's very serious. And that to me doesn't say that the child is bad. That means the child's not getting what they need. And we need to support that adult. So I would very specifically ask what that protocol is and what that support is. And we need to see. I think there's this fear, and I don't really know why, of letting that out. I do think one way to help the school and people facing this challenge in the schools is to have a more cohesive board, is to have a more supportive community, so people feel safe speaking about it and asking for help and showing us opportunities.
Which would also mean board members listening to community members and partnering with them and becoming one. So with all of that said, what are your thoughts on the 2-minute rule?
I agree with structure. I've struggled, but I tell you what, it keeps me, because I'll speak at meetings now, it keeps me to the point, which is a challenge for me. I think there should be some kind of structure and rule. Does it have to be specifically 2 minutes? I would follow whatever protocol. I do think it should be the same for everyone in every opportunity, because that's just fair. So, I'm not necessarily for or against the 2 minutes. I think the idea of having that structure and having the rules for everybody applied fairly help keep things running smoothly.
So with that said, if you had a parent come before the board who was super frustrated with either an IEP that was, not going the right way, or wasn't put in place at all yet, or did have a problem with a child being bullied, or and they wanted to come and speak with you, Do you think there should be a means for a parent to communicate with a board as a whole, or maybe as the city does? I know here in the city there's wards, and so you would contact your ward board member. Is if we're going to limit to 2 minutes, because some of those things certainly would take a lot more than 2 minutes, and not everybody wants to do the email thing. And I understand that, because there's no tone to an email. There's no, a lot can happen in an email or a text, and a lot can be misunderstood. And so if the 2-minute rule is stuck to with a situation like that, where it's somebody who is really frustrated and needing the help from the board because this is their result before they, go beyond, what do we do about that?
That's tough. The email is always open, but to your point, some people don't want to do that. Is there, this is like a Michael question almost, like, is there a method that they could get on the agenda, which would require an email, but would open it up for like a presentation? Mm-hmm. That's a good question. That would be, that would be a board decision. Mm-hmm. But again, you would have to have parameters, because 99% of people would not exploit that, and they'd be there for the right reasons, but all it takes is one to just derail the whole process. Mm-hmm. So there should be something for that, but at the end of the day, if the board is doing the right thing in supporting the school, and the administration down is doing the right thing to support, we shouldn't need this. We do, and I agree, there should be a process, but I want to go even further and be like, they don't need to come to the board, because they have an audience in the school, and their voice is heard. So that's a tough one. As long as it's fair, I'm willing for everything. I don't care. The more communication, the better. It just has to be structured in a way that it's fair.
It's fair across the board.
Yeah.
That was a question that actually came in last night before you came. That was a question that somebody sent to me and said, will you please ask tomorrow? Oh, and so, and it's from a parent that has come before the board before, but been cut right off. And because she met her 2 minutes, and she really felt as though she and her child didn't get the chance that they needed to get. And she's not somebody who emails. And so that was her opportunity, and she just felt, so I told her that I would bring that question forward. I kind of asked Sarah that last night, and I am going to put it out to Sarah so that she has the opportunity also to, give her opinion on that. We have another, it's a comment. Linda says, when it comes to bullying, there's always two sides to every story. And we know that that's true.
And I think, I was listening to Sarah last night too, just to say, I think too, with bullying, the one thing I do want to see, if I'm elected, is we need to show how we don't accept bullying. I have seen over the years instances of bullying at board meetings, not necessarily by the board. Some of it's from the crowd, and there was one in particular. It was to Michael, and I couldn't unmute fast enough. I was virtual, but as a board, I think if we call that out as respectfully, that's bullying behavior. We don't do that and move on. I think that's going to set an example. It's not going to solve it in the schools, but I think modeling that behavior, and again, it's creating a safe space. So if the parents are feeling heard, if the teachers are feeling heard by the administration, and if the community and the board are showing unity and support, it's safer for people to ask for help. It's safer for people to say, and kids pick up on that. It's safer for kids to say, I see this bullying happening. And so it's really from the board perspective, because we can visit, but we're not in the schools. We have to support the schools solving this internally. And when the parents come to us, we have to bring that expectation to the school, because this is a school issue. But the more we can do to be supportive and bring that out in the open and have safe communication for that sort of thing, I think that will help the process as best as anyone can. Bullying's tough. You gotta stay vigilant, unfortunately.
Right. So as a board member, and being somebody, is there a certain committee, subcommittee? I know that they split them off into the finance and the policies and curriculum. And is there one that you think that's something that you would like to dedicate some time to?
Well, I've been on facilities, sort of. Some of our stuff I don't know, they were talking about getting rid of these committees and now they're back. I'm interested, at first I was interested in finance. I think curriculum, I would really be interested in learning more about that. I think the more cohesive as a district our curriculum, the better. And we can provide more specific supports to the teachers in every building when we do that. So I think I would go for a curriculum.
And as we talked about last night, I'll put this out to you as well. What are your thoughts and opinions about the mixed classrooms and the current grading system?
Oh, you mean like different grades?
Levels and different levels of learning in the same classroom. And then, but with the one grading system now, where everybody is on, I forget what it's called, but it's like a level thing because we got to a point in schools and in society really where we work so hard at protecting people's feelings that we're never asking anybody to excel anymore. We're never saying, yes, you met expectations, but what if you just push yourself just a little bit more and you went beyond that? And then, so you're seeing in some instances where somebody does excel when they get to the point in a classroom where they've met expectation, that's where they stay. Because they're not being challenged to move beyond, and they're not being challenged to, proficiency grading is what it's called. But they're not being challenged to rise above that ever, because everybody is, once they meet that threshold, like they're not going beyond, and that's comes from the meeting people, meeting people where they're at. What are your thoughts on that?
I would love to have more specialized programs, intervention, whether they need more help or whether they're excelling. I would love to do as much of that as possible. A lot of this behavior, and I mean, this comes from my time in school. Like I'm a millennial, so we kind of, these things eroded nationally, like kind of as I was sort of right behind me. So I saw that, and also from my mother working in schools, and a lot of this it's like a love-hate with standardized testing, because we need data, right? We need to know that they're doing better, there are improvements, and for the record, we are improving. It's not the best it could be, but we are improving. I just want to say that. So we need that data, but the standardized testing has evolved into this sort of like restriction on the classroom. And I mean, to the point we had I forget, I think it was like a feedback parent meeting in Berrytown. Joanne, the superintendent Canning, did that at every school. And I just asked, I was like, how much standardized testing can we lose before we lose funding? And she's like, none. We can't lose any of it. We need the funding. So I think a lot of that is driven more by our standard approach. I would love to go to a proficiency, I would love to challenge students. I am all ears. But going off of that standard program, I mean, the federal government's doing some stuff now, but generally we need that federal money and we need that standardized test money. And I think I would love to get away from that. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
And with that, does that hold you also to a curriculum where, for the grading, that you're held to this is how you're going to grade everything? There's no A, B, C, D, F anymore. Yeah. either satisfactory, non-satisfactory, whatever. And I don't even know that they give non-satisfactory anymore.
It's like a 1, 2, and 3 on my kids, but I don't know if that's their age or if it's, I don't know. I do know, I think it was No Child Left Behind. There's a certain amount of finance tied to the amount of kids that are held back, and it's to do with like scores and passing, and so a lot of times there's this push to just pass them. And I don't agree with that.
That's a dangerous push.
And it's a very dangerous push, and that's how you get people in the workforce that just are not prepared. So, I mean, we're talking about the governor being very bold. That's going to take a bold approach. That's going to be thinking outside the box, and I'm all for it. We've got to do it in a way that we can afford, but everything we can do for that, yes, I'm for it.
Yeah. Judy Copping would like to get your thoughts on the open concept classrooms.
I am so glad my son had Ms. Burns, because I don't know how they do that. Like, have you been in there?
Yes, my kids went to Berrytown as well.
There, I had no idea this was a thing. But I guess that's, for those who have never been in there, it's like one big open room, and they have these sort of like 3/4 walls, and you go in a door, and there's like a back-to-back class. There's like 3 doors and 6 classrooms, and you walk through one to get to another. I mean, if that's not a testament to the skill of our teachers, I don't know what is. I personally, it seems nice, but I think it makes it a lot harder for kids to focus. And I think it makes it harder for the teachers to teach. But if we're going to build walls, that takes money. So, I think we're doing a great job. I think they've built their little 3/4 walls as best they can. But yeah.
Room dividers, and they do what they can. But I had one of my boys was totally fine with it. He could tune just about anything out. And the other it made things really tough for him. And so I can see where, very hard to focus for sure. And Judy just said the same thing, hard to focus.
Yeah, I would absolutely have been just like all over here if I was in, I can't imagine. Yeah, it's tough.
Sure, for sure. So, we've talked about what committees that you would like to be on if you could. Are there any policies or things that are happening right now that you would like to totally do away with, or that you would like to implement some changes because you think those changes could bring some good?
Oh my gosh, policy specifics. I mean, I hesitate on these kinds of things because the board is, we weigh in on that, but ultimately, I mean, it's the voters, it's the community that decides these things or truly weighs in. I really want to know what they're doing with behavior and how we can focus on that. To be fair, I did not read the handbooks. I know Sarah did. I didn't read them before I came. What are the systems we have in place for support for the students and for the staff, and what is the barrier to communicating to these parents? Is there one? Some parents hear about it, some parents don't. But I think any sort of policy that addresses behavior and brings it out in the open. We need to face this. This is not just a city kids. This is all of the schools. It's not even just Barry. So those policies specifically, I think, would make a huge impact.
Right, because I did mention that last night. Students from Washington and Orange both can come to Spalding, so they don't go to the other schools, but they can choose to come to Spalding or Williamstown. Those are the 2 schools. So the makeup definitely isn't. It's very unified union, but it is the small towns on the outskirts that need their students to come here. So we are a much bigger unit than what we say sometimes.
It really is all inclusive, which again, maybe a responsible, self-driven merge is what we need in whatever that looks like. But this is it's all students, and they're all different. They're diverse. And it's a challenge. And I think that just being open about that and providing the support. We can't do everything financially, nobody's made of money, but we can as a community be supportive, we can be open, we can be accepting, and I think that's going to make a huge, huge difference as we go forward.
Do you think merging could save money?
If we do it right, I think we haven't seen that savings because I think it was just sort of pushed and it needs to be planned. I think I hope there's a way we can create a sort of population density savings, because that's what merging would do. It's creating this population density that you'd have in, the big districts in other states. So however we can replicate that, yes, but I don't think that looks like just kind of smushing schools together, for what it's worth.
And I just want to say, Karen, I'm not skipping over your question. I'm not sure if maybe you tuned in a little late, but we did discuss the governor's proposal for the consolidation of districts. So maybe you can, either she can loop back to it and watch it, or if you want, you can answer it again, whatever you want to do. Or when we're finished, you can also message her or reply on the comments.
We can. I mean, just to summarize, I'm glad he proposed it. I don't know for sure. I mean, we don't have all the details. So just conceptually, I'm for it. I don't know if that specific number of districts is the right number. I don't know what it would look like. I think it's a good idea, and I think it should be explored. And yeah, possibly we might end up at a lower number. We might not end up lower at all, but I think there is a real opportunity to have some kind of combined savings, and I'm glad we're exploring it.
Good. You're welcome, Karen. And we weren't right on at noon either because I had some technical difficulties. So, but yeah, just so that everyone knows, these podcasts remain on. The only comments that don't remain are the ones that come in from YouTube. Those don't remain for some reason. But the comments on Facebook do remain, and Jackie can go back and answer anything. And I'm sure that you will give us all of your contact information before you go, and we'll put that in the comments as well so that people know how to reach out to you with further comments or questions that they might have.
Absolutely. I love that.
And because we did also discuss that you want that open communication.
Oh, yeah.
And you look forward to that. So just so we all know. So is there anything else that you think that we should know about you as a candidate, as a mom, as a citizen of Barre? And is there anything else that you think that we should know?
God, I don't know. I think we covered it. I think we covered everything.
I think we did too. And, for me, being able to do this isn't always about all of the questions, the numbers, the hard lines, all of that's super important. Going through the budget line by line, yes, is that super important, and understanding what that's all about and where the money is going, of course. But I think that is always top of mind for anybody listening. And you did touch on those things, and you certainly can, and people can watch our Facebook page and see how you feel and think and feel about those things. But having you here and giving a face to the name, to the candidate, and kind of like the living room or sitting around the dining room table having a conversation with somebody, for me is much more important. I get to know you as a person a little bit, and not just the person that's maybe standing at the park holding a sign, waving it, saying vote for me.
I'm there too.
Yeah, and it just, for me, it makes a big difference. And so that's, I'm very happy to be able to do this and to introduce you to the community that you may not otherwise get to meet. Because no one's going to stop at the circle down there and talk to you. I can promise you that.
It's way too cold
yes,
this year.
It is.
Yeah, we have a real winter this year.
Yes, we do. So, But I just want you to, anything that you think or anything that you come up with, please know, even afterward, you're welcome to come take the mic anytime,
Oh, well, thank you.
anytime you want.
Now that I have the right door.
Yeah, and talk to everybody and let them know what's happening. I would love to get the school board more involved in general and have updates. I mean, Michael kind of does it, but he has a hard time because he's doing these updates with me, who I watch the meetings, but I'm not so focused that I know what's really going on. And so to have somebody here giving those updates to the community, even on a monthly basis, I think would be a really good idea. If a few of you, and maybe you can have a committee for that, where you all discuss what you're gonna, what you're gonna tell, what you're gonna, that's right, what you're gonna air out or tell, or whatever like that. So.
And I will say, while you were talking, I thought of this. I will say, as far as communication. So in hearing from the community, the job of the board is to be the liaison. So it's not the job of the board to tell the school what to do. It's not the job of the board to tell the community what the school, it's a liaison. It's very much a listening position. And I think there's a real opportunity. And you mentioned, the budget and stuff, and you're right. I mean, this really is about the kids, and we just need to pay for it. So, but I think we're so focused, there's a lot of fear, and that's valid. You're afraid of paying your bills. And so I think the more we can speak to that fear, and I think the opportunity with the board is to take that emotion out of it and to say, here's how it works. We have a lot of questions. Well, how can there be an increase and we have a decrease in taxes? Well, the CLA really messed with us last year, and they changed it. It's a state average, and we benefited. So it's these little tweaks that you look at it and you're like, how can there be a higher and we're paying less, and how does that work? And yeah, it's weird. But there's an opportunity there for the board to educate. And I think there's also an opportunity, I've heard this a lot, is board members will come and say, oh, somebody, my neighbor or this specific group of people came to me and they said, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I'm on a fixed income. And I think we need to get better at, and the board and really everybody needs to get better at helping people get resources. So many people don't understand if you are really on a low, steady, income and you need help, there is help. And that help is there because we should never have to decide about between a roof over our head and educating our kids. It's about working together, and it's about taking that fear away as much as we can. So yes, I would like to get off this, specific number stuff. I do enjoy looking into it, but that's just me. But we need to talk about it because it's scary for people, and it's
to
real.
Explain it to people.
Yeah,
because
and
it is.
We need to.
And then because there are so many stories, you have, they're lying because they want you to pass the budget, and then this isn't really going to happen. The taxes aren't going down. They're going to go up. They just want you to say yes. And then you have the other side that's saying, no, we're not, this is what we're trying to do. But to have some sort of explanation about that and more communication. And when I say that, I get, it's frustrating too. I say that about things with the city and people complaining about the roads right now. All of these meetings are open to the public. Anybody can go to a school board meeting. You can attend in person. You can attend via Zoom. And so if you don't know, there's visitors and communications, show up, ask your questions. You can't fault somebody if you're the one not asking and not knowing. And or send an email. Make sure that you're being a part of what's happening. If you're going to complain, and that's just the way I feel about it. If you're going to complain about it, let's sit down and have a conversation about it then, because it's the only way you're going to learn, and it's the only way the board's going to know where you're coming from, and where you need to. It's kind of like you say that you meet kids where they're at. Well, it's not just the kids. There's a lot of adults. I don't understand any of it. I make Michael, slow down, talk about it just little by little. And I don't always take Michael's word for it either. It's just the way I am about it. I have a couple of friends that are really good about it, and they explain things to me better sometimes. But then I also have a totally different view than what Michael has. And sometimes my view ends up in the middle or one side or the other. But I have that opportunity and I give it to myself.
Yes.
And I wish more people would.
Yes. And I think too, you got to make it comfortable for them to go, but there is a point, if they're not willing to do this, that, or the other, but there's also a trust. So I tend to assume good intent, or at least neutral intent. And so when there's a complaint, like the minutes weren't up on the website, and I looked, I was virtual, and I'm looking like, oh yeah, they haven't been posted since December. Now in my head, I'd be like, oh, they must have forgotten, because they're public meetings, right? They're not hiding anything. And it's, if we can just agree, like, either it's they made a mistake or they didn't mean to.
Maybe somebody was on vacation or sick.
And that's
or,
just one example, but and it's like, instead of like they're hiding something. And so we just need to agree to assume at least neutral intent, if not good intent, and then open that communication. So I think, and again, it's a lot of fear. And once you start assuming that people are trying to tell you the truth, trying to tell you the real story. And again, like you said, you look up you don't believe Michael verbatim.
No.
I mean, people don't have to believe me verbatim. Go ahead and look it up. Like if I get people asking, I'll try to post it on Facebook. Where did I find this? And that's valid. You should. You should question everybody who's saying
well, that's
these
just
things.
it. It's not that I don't trust him. He's a very good friend of mine. I consider him like family, and I really trust him. But he shouldn't always just only listen to me either. We all have different opinions, and you should be able to just be open and get as many sides as possible before you make your decision.
And that's what, to toot Michael's horn a little bit, that's the thing, is like watching him on the board, he does do his best to be fair and, listen to everybody and follow the rules. And I think that's valid, because at the end of the day, it's not about getting everybody, again, the same. We have to have the same goal in mind, and then we think differently to get to that goal. Like, that's what makes it better. Yeah.
All right. So before we go, well, first of all, thank you very much
I had fun.
for joining us and taking the time out of your day and dealing with all the technical difficulties and the work in the basement and the rattles and saws every once in a while. I hope you all can't hear it, but we're having some work done on the furnace in the basement. Every once in a while, the saw starts up and they crank through another pipe or something down there.
I don't even notice it.
Yeah, it just makes the floor rumble a little bit. It's okay. But anyways, thank you so much for coming. Really, really appreciate you. And so, but before we go, I'll just make sure there's nothing last minute you want to say, no last minute pitches.
Can't think of anything.
And
Nobody had any comments, no.
want to make sure that we get your contact info up.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to reach Jackie Wheeler, how do they do that?
It's Facebook is, I'd have to look at the specific name.
Yep.
But I did screenshot it for this very purpose. It is, it's Jackie Wheeler for Berry Schools. So facebook.com/jackie.wheeler.BUUSD.
So Jackie.Wheeler.
Wheeler.BUUSD. Or it's Jackie Wheeler for Berry Schools. You can search it too. But
right. Linda says, thank you. You have my vote.
Oh, thank you.
All right. And then how about an email?
Wheeler Jack, I think it was, you'll have to, so Wheeler Jack, WHEELERJAC @outlook.com.
All right. I'll get that in there. So now everybody knows how to reach you, and hopefully those lines of communication stay open. And We will say again, voting is March 4th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Barry Auditorium in the city. And in the town, it is at the Barry Elementary School, also from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I was told last night by Sarah that the city voting, it will be in the basement of the auditorium, which is a little bit of a change, and that has something to do with the basketball schedule up there right now. So just keep that in mind. There's still handicap accessibility for that, but that is what I was told, that it may be in the basement in Barry City. So we'll see how that goes, and we hope that everybody gets out to vote on March 4th. If you are somebody who doesn't want to get out or is going to be gone on vacation or something, there is absentee ballots. I don't know that I would use the mail at this point. I think I would still pick up and then drop off at the clerk's office. Those boxes are available for you to do so. But we're getting kind of close. I don't trust the mail for that.
Well, and
it
I
used to
think-
be 2-3 days and it was fine.
I wouldn't.
But now it's much greater than that.
Well,
So-
and most people don't know, like, you can literally go to your town clerk's office,
And
get
put it
your
in the car.
ballot, fill it out in your car, and go in and hand it back to them. That
Yeah.
still counts as long as you're the one voting. you
Yeah.
know? So it is actually pretty easy. If you're not registered, you can show up at the polls, and they, with an ID, preferably, and they can register you there. So I've had a number of people that have been able to do that at the last vote. So definitely go out and vote. Vote,
And
vote, vote.
Linda says there's also a mailbox out behind the Opera House where you can drop your ballots in.
Nice.
And I don't know if there's one up at the town or not. I've always voted in person, so I've never used them. So I'm not sure.
I think there's a box. I think it's still at the town office. Maybe a chatter will. Nobody's going to help me with this. I think there's one. I'm the same. I've always been in
Yeah,
person.
she's
so.
Karen says at the town hall
Town
in
hall,
Barrytown.
Barrytown.
So,
Okay.
so that's awesome. And Karen also says thanks that you have her vote. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So, again, thanks for joining. And
Thanks for
as I
having me.
told
This has
Sarah
been
last
fun.
night, good luck, and we'll see what happens on the
Yeah,
4th.
I'll see you at the polls. I'm going to try and run back and forth between two of them all day.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.